Okay, welcome to Prem for our first interview on Yoga Chats. He's in Bali and he is the author of The Only Way Out Is In, a fantastic book I very much recommend you getting and reading. And as I was saying before we got previously cut off in our first attempt at the interview, it really is when people ask me, what book to read for Ashtanga. I feel that this is really the only book out there that captures someone's own journey, who's a kind of a long-term practitioner as well, in not only in a philosophical sense but also in an emotional sense. It's a really unique book because it gives your own life story in an emotional way, but with a lot of philosophy attached as well.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks. That
love.
was my intention for
Yeah,
sure. I wanted to
love the
be,
book. Yeah.
yeah, I wanted to be as authentic and candid as possible,
It really is. Yeah.
and give people a sense of like, hey, once you start yoga, it's not like game over. It's like it's a roller coaster ride. And depending on your own personal karma, like for instance, like that book was written in 2007, 2006, 2007. So, fast forward to 2013, my daughter dies. So, okay, how do you handle that, Prem? Like, what do
Mm,
you do now?
mm.
So, I could write a whole nother book for sure. And I would
Are you,
call
are
it,
you going to?
yeah, I have another book in the works and it's gonna be called The Only Way In Is Out. So it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, do
And
it.
I'm gonna contradict everything I said
Yeah, yeah,
before.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. The thing is,
No, I mean, one of the things, Adam, I think I've mentioned this to you before.
mm,
Part of what I enjoy about doing this and interacting with students and
mm,
people in regards to yoga, Ayurveda, tantra, whatever the things that I've studied, is to keep it really lighthearted. Lighthearted meaning that I want people to understand that the higher chakras, the higher centers within the context of this form that we have, this vehicle, like the sixth center is beyond, it's beyond the five senses. So we have
mm,
five senses,
mm,
and our sixth sense is
mm.
beyond the five senses. And our sixth sense is called common sense. And it's very, very uncommon.
Right, right. So it's a kind of
People don't
intuition in a way, isn't it? It's like a kind of deep intuition.
it's
Mm,
deep
mm,
intuition.
mm,
But how many people really know how to access intuition on a daily basis? You
yeah,
might get a
yeah.
glimpse here and there, but how do you actually access it and operate from that place? That's what it means to be in the zone. When
Right.
you're operating from that place and you're in the driver's seat, you're in the zone. And it doesn't mean that everything's going to be pretty. It just means that you're going to be able to see clearly what it is that's going on within the context of your own personal life and your own personal karma. So
Mm, mm.
that's your sixth sense. The next one in your seventh sense is sense of humor. You have to have a good sense of humor. It's
Yeah.
really important.
I think it's easy to put the stuff up there, isn't it? To make everything kind of transcendent, and all these special kind of, states and ideas. It's all out there
Yeah,
as something, happens when you get here, or, actually rather than say, well, it's right now. Everything is here and now.
that's
And,
right.
then that was the beauty of the book, I think, because you made it very practical and down to earth, the whole journey. And you didn't, there was no fakery in it. Like, oh, I've reached this state and now I'm all, now everything is fine. It was really, a very bare bones and honest expose of how it is
Yeah,
to
yeah,
try
cool.
try and live a deeper life, but yet actually still be very much enmeshed in the practical difficulties of the emotional life that we live.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
to that end, I
Yeah.
mean, I wanted particularly today to, I mean, hopefully we'll do a few of these, but particularly today, Bram, I wanted to pick your brains about Ayurveda because I know you studied
Okay.
directly with Vasant Lad, Dr. Vasant Lad, who's probably maybe the foremost proponent of Ayurveda in the West, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and really, Ayurveda is now, really a few years ago it was kind of trendy, but now you don't hear much about Ayurveda. But as I understand it, they always say it's like a sister science to yoga, or like two wings of a bird.
Yeah.
Ayurveda and yoga have to go together. And
Exactly.
my
Exactly.
understanding of it is, if you don't have Ayurveda, the yoga, the Ayurveda was actually there to kind of calm down the overstimulation of yoga, because yoga is meant to stimulate you, isn't it? It's meant to churn things up. And if you don't have
Yep.
any ways to kind of button that down, to allow that stability to take the charge that yoga gives you,
Yeah.
you're in trouble. And I think that without the use of yoga, with Ayurveda and yoga these days, I think people you're seeing this especially in the Ashtanga world. You got people traveling, you got people drinking copious amounts of coffee, and then doing this practice, right? And it's
Yeah.
completely unhinging people, which is
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
okay, well that's a little and the end of my understanding of Ayurveda. Really, I try and use a few principles, but yeah, do you want to say your understanding of how it needs to be applied to yoga?
Sure. No, I think that's a great segue into the importance of having the science of Ayurveda included in your study of these Vedic systems. Asana practice is just a very, very tiny part. It's a very, very tiny element of what yoga is all about. It's a critical part. It's a stepping stone. It's something that helps you to stay healthy and vital and strong. And it helps your nervous system and your circulatory system and your endocrine system and all these things. But like you said, if you don't understand the principles of Ayurveda, the elemental, fundamental, foundational principles of Ayurveda that's interwoven within the yoga system, because it's the same understanding as a yogi. You need to understand the five elements and the prana, the the vayus, the pitta part, the heat part, the agni, the kapha, the water and the earth. These five elements, they work together within us, and we each have a unique constitutional type. We
Mm.
come in with a special kind of recipe, so to speak. That's what Dr. Ladd used to say. He said we're each of us are a unique recipe of these five elements. And so it's important that we understand who we are as a micro universe. Okay? And as a
That's to
micro
do with the
universe,
Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, right? People
yeah,
ban these definitions around a lot, right? But and they kind of
yeah,
can be a little bit taken in a parody or cliche way, but they're really important to understand your own dosha, right?
yeah,
Within practice. How does that
the
affect
dosha,
practice?
well, the doshas are Vata, Pitta, Kapha.
Mm-hmm.
And Vata, Pitta, and Kapha are a combination of two elements. So Kapha is the element of water and earth combined together, which is the principle of stamina, of strength, of structure, of integrity. Everybody has it. Some people have more than others. Pitta is fire and water combined together, and it's the principle of transformation. Fire transforms things. Agni, fire, transforms things from one form to another form. Like when you eat something, you take the food, the digestive juices in your mouth, in your stomach, the fire that's there, it transforms it and makes it part of you. There's an Agni in your brain. If you don't understand something, you're not going to be able to understand it because the fire is not strong enough to
Mm.
perceive.
Why
So,
would water go with fire, by the way? It seems a strange
because
combination.
yeah, because it's just if you just had just fire,
Right.
it's just the water element of fire in Pitta is just the ability to be able to see it in the context of like a liquid fire, like lava,
Right.
like the heated principle that's within the liquid context. If you just have like raw fire, just like a fire burning. If I talk about, oh, there's a fire burning in your belly. Well, there's not a fire there. It's a chemical combination of hydrochloric acid and all these enzymes and all these things that create like the transformation. And that's actually related to the deities. So Vishnu is the operator. Vishnu and Saraswati, sorry, Vishnu and Lakshmi are the deities that maintain and organize the energy within your body. And they're related to Pitta and fire. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The water element is Brahma and Saraswati, the creative element of music and literature and
Oh wow, this is complicated, isn't it?
yeah, I mean well, it's not really, because people need to understand this. This is the technology
Yeah.
of yoga. And so to go deeper, it's not just like, oh, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva. Okay,
Mm,
that's great. I
mm,
just memorized the three,
mm, mm,
main deities, the trinity of Hinduism. But what does it really mean?
mm,
What does it
mm.
really mean? You have to step it down and understand it from the standpoint of what I'm speaking. And look, Adam, you and everyone who's listening to this and watching this, it's already been installed. It's already installed within you. It's something that you inherently know. You intuitively know this. I am just bringing it down to a level that's like resonating something in
Mm.
you that's like, oh yeah, uh-huh. Oh yeah, that makes sense. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. When you get that uh-huh, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, that's good sound. It's like the sound of Om, it's like mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So that's a good
So
resonation. It's like
how do
you're
these,
like,
I mean,
yeah,
how to know one's own dosha, first of all, and how to apply that? Because I know you're very particular as to how to apply practice to one's own dosha type, because you've got all these, I mean, in a very kind of glib, again, superficial way of talking, you've got all these people attracted to Ashtanga. They're generally quite kind of
yeah,
wiry, thin, kind
yeah, it's
of
interesting.
airy people,
Yeah,
and they're attracted because of their dosha,
yeah,
which is more Vata, and yet it can aggravate that
yeah,
dosha as well. So how do we
exactly,
avoid being
exactly.
attracted by the very thing that we don't need any more of?
I'll tell you, Adam. I'll tell
Okay, well
you.
that's what I'm waiting for. Yeah, being one of those people myself.
There's a principle within Ayurveda that says like attracts like.
Yes,
So we're
and
attracted to things that aren't necessarily good
and
for us.
any natural science and medicine actually. Well, I mean, I studied
Hey,
homeopathy as well.
exactly, exactly. So um, now the interesting thing of what I just said is the remedy for that is opposites balance. That's how simple it is. So let's say you're very, very pitta, you're very fiery, you have a lot of heat, you have a lot of intensity, you have this kind of energy. So the opposite of that is cooling, calming, you know, um, something that tempers the fire. Because if you feed the fire, which is what pitta people like to do, because like attracts like, they love
Mm,
intense things, they love
mm,
fiery things. But if
mm,
they turn up the heat too much, they're gonna what? They're gonna burn out.
mm,
Okay? The vata, that's pitta, that's fire. The vata element is movement. Vata, air and ether. I haven't spoken about that yet. Air and ether is the principle of movement. So, someone who's very vata is typically very thin. They have a hard time gaining weight. Their patterns are very irregular. They're regularly irregular. So they're very inconsistent people. They're spontaneous like the wind. So they go here and they go there and a lot of talking, a lot of blah blah blah, and they're very ungrounded. Now you can ground vata if you know how to use it. You can harness the wind. You can harness that if you know how to organize it. And
mm.
that's the technology of Ayurveda and Tantra and yoga. How to organize these things so that they work for you and not against you.
So you're not trying to change your dosha, you're just trying to understand it and kind of work with it, right?
That's correct. That's correct.
So what would you do, like as a Vata person?
Well, as a Vata person,
practicing Ashtanga.
Look, everybody has all three doshas. They have all three. They have all five elements, and they have all three doshas operating within them, within their body and their mind. Now, some people have more of one than another. So, for instance, it usually goes in pairs. So, for instance, my prakruti, it's called, my constitutional type is Vata primarily and Pitta very close second. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Radha, my wife, is exact opposite. She has more Kapha and she has Pitta secondarily. They're very, very close. So we meet with fire in the middle. There's a lot of fire. But she has more of the earth, more of the groundedness, the more of like organizing, structure, holding the fort down, doing all those things. That's Radha. That's what she does. She takes care. Her name is perfect, Radha. Mine is actually Prem Krishna. So Radha and Krishna, Krishna Radha. Actually, when we come together, we're Prada. You know Prada?
Yes, yes.
So
did you get given? I mean, by the way, did you get given those names, or did you make the names up? Did you self-appoint? I always wanted to ask
they
you.
Kind of,
they just came to you.
They kind of came to us. I mean, It wasn't like, oh, let's take an Indian name. Won't that be cute? It's a great name. Prem is like a awesome name. It means love.
You were called Prem before Radha was called Radha, weren't you? I think you were using that name. Yeah, as I remember. Yeah.
But it's, not to get off track.
It is a good name. Yeah. Let's not get off track because we haven't got so much time, and we really want to find out.
That's nature.
Yeah, as listeners, the practicalities of using this science. Give me some practicalities of how we might balance off what we see as often, the burnout in people doing Ashtanga. They're depleting themselves with too much fire. The Vata people are aggravating themselves with over flexibility and too much movement and too much ungroundedness. And the Kapha people probably aren't doing much of it at all.
They don't come to.
They don't even come. They don't. Yeah, or they come and they say it's too hard, and you have to. One of these people you have to coax and sometimes they come and do a bit of standing, and then they say I'm tired. I've got a migraine. I know there's some people. So how to use these things practically, but both I suppose in terms of how we might amend the practice practically, and also because people ask me this all the time when I mention Ayurveda, and I say I know the idea of how to of it, but I don't know really the practicalities of how to use it.
Okay, Adam, I'm going to throw it back in your lap. I'm going to put it back in your lap because you just said it. You just said the answer.
Okay.
You just said the answer. The trick to it is understanding. So as a practitioner, as a teacher, you need to know your own constitutional type. Okay. Number one, physician, heal thyself. Understand your own microcosm. When you understand your own microcosm, you'll be able to understand everything outside of you, because this is like a mini laboratory in which we explore from the inside out. That's what the whole, the only way out is in proclamation is. We have to start with ourselves. And we have this beautiful vehicle, this context of being a human being to explore that. And the principles of Ayurveda are implemented within that. So, number one is you need to understand who you are. And I would say primarily you have Pitta and Vata. You have a tremendous amount of fire, and you have a lot of Vata. You have a lot of air. Okay? You have Kapha also.
Sounds about right.
but
Right.
it's not on the, the high end.
Mm.
So as a Pitta Vata person, how do you monitor that within your own practice? Just intuitively. So as a
You could ask me
practitioner,
or tell me.
well,
Well, as you
I'm
said, like attracts likes. One tends to do more of what is attractive, right? So more
right.
movement, more, kind of
Yeah,
more intensity,
yeah,
more
yeah,
pushing, more
yeah,
handstands, and then, and that,
yeah,
well, that hasn't done
yeah.
me that well, really,
No,
just
I've
going into
I've
that
seen
more.
I've seen your post, Adam. I
Yeah.
see your post. So look, Pitta people like to look good. They want to look good. They're doing like, Titibhasana and handstands and, Vrishtikasana, and they like to show off because it's just part of their thing.
Right.
They like how they look. They're very visual. They're very visually oriented. Okay. So it's just part of your nature. But if you go overboard, then you get a little bit too egotistical, right?
Mm.
Hey, look at me. Look what I can do, you know?
Well, I
So
hope
we
that
have to
doesn't
use,
come out too much.
no, come on, man. Plenty of, look,
You got some
it's
nice asana
fun.
photos as well there. I've
Of
seen some
course,
nice asana. Yeah.
I've made an asana out of myself many times.
Right.
There's
So
plenty.
so noticing is a lot of it. Noticing one's own
Yeah,
conduct, right?
yeah, yeah. So now let's flip it to like teaching. Okay. Once you really understand the principles and how it's operating within you, then you start going, wow, this person here in front of me, this student is very, very Vata. I can tell. They have a Vata type. Their concentration's all over the place. They're ungrounded. So, how am I going to use Ashtanga Yoga as a tool to bring more balance? Am I going to give them a lot? Am I going to make them do it really quickly? Am I going to, kind of, yell and scream at them? No, it's gonna disrupt their Vata. So we need to like really be like really delicate with Vata people. Dr. Lad used to say that Vata people are like flowers. They're like a delicate flower. We have to treat them with like kit gloves. And we need to like embrace them in a way of like grounding their energy more. So like enhancing Mulabandha, enhancing their exhale. Like exhaling helps to ground people. Maybe take a little wider stance,
Right.
not like heel to arch. Like go a little wider. Play with like moving your foot out a little bit more. So it gives you a feeling of more groundedness.
But you'd keep them in the same sequences, right? I mean, because
Yeah,
wouldn't
yeah,
but
yeah.
doing a lot, I mean, would you, I mean, like the traditional, I say traditional, but the current way it's done where you kind of, you extend the series, you do your one series, say, and then you move on to the next. So what would you allow this kind of mentality with the Vata? And also, I mean, just advanced in them, like advanced series full stop. Is that good for a Vata person? People often say I'm Vata, so the Ashtanga doesn't suit me.
No, just again, okay, I'm going to use an example that I've used 1,000 times. Let me get a prop. Hang
All
on, I'll
right.
be right back.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, I'm back.
That's quick. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, you see this?
Yeah. It's nice. Nice knife.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I can use this knife and carve like a beautiful statue. You see this beautiful piece of wood behind me?
Yeah, yeah, I have noticed it. Yeah,
Amazing, amazing wood carvings here in
beautiful.
Bali.
Yeah, yeah,
Like these
yeah.
people like they use like a tool, a sharp tool, and they're like tick 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 tick, and they make like this amazing tool. Okay,
Mm.
so they could make it with this. Now they could take this knife and go, yeah, and stab somebody and kill them with it. Is this the problem?
Mm, mm.
It's in whose hands it is. So if we use the tool of Ashtanga Yoga, we can create a lot of harm. We can create a lot of himsa, or we can use it in a way that's ahimsa. and we can use it appropriately and administer it as an Ayurvedic doctor, almost like as a medicine. It's a medicine or meditation. It's the same root word, medicine, meditation. So you administer the practice in such a way that it's like medicine for these Vata people. They're more grounded, they're more centered. When they're done with their practice, they feel like, wow, I feel good. I don't feel exhausted. I'm not like, oh my God, I'm more Vata. And then I run off to the next thing.
So you'd still allow them or encourage them to do, say, advanced postures, even though they're Vata?
Oh yeah, I have them start off. Look, the beauty of Ashtanga Yoga is that it's a formula that can work, but you need to be able to administer correctly. It's not the same recipe that you hand out. It's not the same kind of medicine that you hand out to every single person. Everyone's unique. So you got to meet them where they're at. But in the context of making it simplified, the Vata Pitta Kapha is a great place to start. And then it gets a little bit more interesting as you move and grow with people. See? Otherwise it gets boring too. If you just like, oh, Vata, they're very ungrounded, so I'm going to ground them. Well, there's other elements that are there too. Maybe they have some fire. Maybe they have some
Right.
Blah,
so
blah,
it's
blah,
so the dosha isn't kind of it's a bit more in flux. They could kind of flow into different aspects of, some kapha might come out and
all the time.
Right. Okay. What about
Dude, it changes all the time. In a 24-hour day, it changes twice. So from 3 to 6 in the morning and 3 to 6 in the evening, that's the highest time of Vata. That's why those windows of time are really the best time to meditate, especially 3 to 6 in the morning, because there's a heightened amount of like uplifted energy to sit and be quiet and connect with the higher realms. It's called the ambrosia time. It's like the best time to meditate. So it goes through. So in a 24-hour day, it goes through all these different Vata Pitta Kapha. And then your age, it's broken down into different energies also. From birth until puberty, it's a kapha time. It's a building time. You're building your structure, your bone structure, your blood. Everything is building. And then you hit puberty, and puberty is more of a fire time. The hormones kick in. You're like more interested in like girls and boys and making money and how do I do this and how do I do that, and that lasts until about 50 or 60.
That long?
And then and then when you're about 50 or 60, then Vata kicks in. And if you haven't been paying attention to moderating your dosha, then when Vata kicks in, and let's say you're Vata constitution, and you hit 50 or 60, oh, you're in for hell, man. You're gonna have arthritis. You're gonna have a lot of different problems happening because you haven't been taking care of yourself and moderating, the inherent energies that are there. And then, what environment are you in? Are you in a Vata environment? Are you sitting in the middle of a city? Are you sitting in the middle of an environment that's very Vata in the air? Vata is very cold. It's very dry. So if you're in a cold, dry environment, that's going to increase your Vata. You see, if you're a Pitta person and you're living in the tropics and you're always going out in the sun and doing a lot of things that invoke a lot of heat.
What if you can't help living where you live?
Ashtanga really hardly.
What if you can't help living in a cold, dry place? Or I suppose in terms of lifestyle can you put in to make sure that you kind of guard yourself? Yeah.
Of course you can.
You can.
Of course you can.
Right. What about
that's the whole thing.
What about people always ask about food?
About modifying.
What kind of ideas around food have you got? And
that's a whole nother. Well, look, this is a vast topic, man.
It
You
is,
know,
it is.
it's
But people always want to know about food, so we have to address the food bit a bit for different dosha types, and also this kind
well,
of um, idea about Ayurveda that it's just a lot of milk and ghee. Is that when it comes to food,
yeah,
whatever it is you got wrong
yeah.
with you,
That's
just drink a pint of ghee and you'll be all right. Yeah.
yeah. See, this is the stupid stuff that goes on in the yoga world and in the health world in general. It's like immediately, oh, it's Indian. Oh, and you have to drink butter and ghee and milk, and that's all it's about. It's just about Indian food. It's like it has nothing to do with Indian food. It has to do with principles. It came from India, but it doesn't mean that, yoga is, inherently just for Indians and for Indian
Mm.
people.
Yeah, it's just
It's
about
for
balancing
everybody.
energies. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's about balancing energies. So,
And a
but
lot of that
food
stuff is
things,
in macrobiotics. In fact, if you look at like macrobiotics, it's very similar to Ayurveda, right? In terms of the hot and cold and the dry and
yeah,
the wet,
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean,
And
it's
obviously they use brown rice a lot, but it doesn't,
macrobiotics.
just because that's what came to hand to Misha like it wasn't inherently you had to eat brown rice.
Macrobiotics comes from China, comes from the Chinese principles, which is based in Ayurveda. It's just a different set of elements, but they're very similar. But if you want to study, if you're into yoga, then it's best to study Ayurveda because the translation of Chinese into, you know, Indian train of thought is a little bit, why translate? Just go like, okay, prana. Prana's chi, but why mix it up with like Chinese stuff? Like just go directly with like the Sanskrit. Prana is energy, it's vitality, it's associated with the breath, it's associated with the food that you eat. How much prana is in your food? So we get prana through our food and through our breath.
So going back
That's
to
why
that person who's
pranayama.
in a Vata state, or even like, I mean, I'd say like for me, perhaps that, yeah, I reckon we're going into Ashtanga. I probably was in more of a Kapha state, right? And it brought out, and I think I noticed this with a lot of people. It brings to the fore a more of a Pitta and a Vata energy, right? And before
Yeah,
and at first I think it was more Pitta, and then at a certain point, with all the movements and all the more, adding of postures, it becomes more and more Vata. And I mean,
yeah,
how would and I notice this in so many people, and then, they're aggravated or kind of overstimulated in this manner, becoming increasingly Vata. How could you use food or lifestyle choices to just kind of temper that or calm that down? Because as I understand at the start, I mentioned that we'd always have traditionally in practicing yoga some way of tempering the forces which are in yoga to stimulate, right?
yeah, yeah. So again, we have to know what it is that we're doing with this practice. Okay, so Ashtanga Yoga has a certain set of principles involved with it. So we have the bandhas. Okay, they're initiators of energy. We have the ujjayi breathing, which can increase the prana, which increases your energy, but it also can increase your heat. The movement, the vinyasa, that will increase the energy of the prana moving through your body. It also increases heat. So all these things are vata and pitta basically, right? So that's why vata and pitta people are attracted to ashtanga. Now, what we have to do as practitioners and as teachers is to use the practice appropriately and modify it accordingly. So the template is what it is. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. So the beauty of having a program like Ashtanga is that I can teach I can teach Ashtanga to someone here in Bali, and then I can say, "Hey, John, you might want to go practice with Adam in England. He'll give you some good feedback." So they learn Surya Namaskara A, Surya Namaskara B, the standing sequence, and let's say he goes up to Navasana, half of primary, and then he does his finishing. So I send them off to you, and then you're able to look and see.
And he can't find me because I'm still not in England. I'm in France, but he's looking all around England because you've told him I'm in England.
All right.
Then he gets on the Eurostar.
I have no idea.
I keep telling you I'm in France. I'm English. I'm in France.
Yeah, well, then lose your fucking accent then. You know what?
Yeah, I know. That's what they say to me here as well. Right. Yeah. Okay. Carry on. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's just a matter of, it's going to take some time. It takes some time. You have to study it a little bit. But again, it's hardwired within your body and your mind. It's there. It's inherently there.
Do you think you if you can kind of just dial down, people know?
Yeah, they intuitively know.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? There's
so often spaced out. Yeah. I'm spaced out.
You kind of know. You do kind of know.
Yeah. Is Ashtanga going to be good for me?
But the funny thing is that I do think that we're increasingly just kind of told or encouraged to put our power out there. It's like you kind of know, but and people they come and question you, right? You have this 100 times, I'm sure, and they kind of, well, what do you think? And they know what actually that they're spaced out. That the practice is aggravating them, but the responsibility is still like somewhere. Well, I need an expert to tell me. I need an authority to diagnose my state, rather than saying, well, actually, what is happening. You're drinking too much coffee. You're going to probably around, too many different teachers doing too much practice,
There you go.
Living on raw foods and sweets,
There you go. More Vata.
So what do you do? What do you do with this type of person? What kind of instructions? Because also they're attracted to these things as well. So it's not very comfortable to go in the opposite direction.
Yeah. Do you have kids, Adam?
No, I don't.
Okay. So they're like little kids. Everybody's got like a little kid in them.
Well, yes. Yeah.
So
still,
how many kids like to take responsibility?
Yeah.
They want to test. They want to test the boundaries. Even though they know that drinking or eating a bunch of candy is not good for them. They get a stomach ache. They feel like shit afterwards. But they love to eat all the sweets. And they don't listen. So there's a certain amount of if we're working with responsible adults, I'm not saying look at everybody like a little child. If they're coming to you and you have the wisdom and the knowledge to give them, I'm not saying that most yoga teachers don't know what the hell they're doing. I'm very against this 200-hour teacher training thing. You can't learn about yourself and then be able to convey all that in 200 hours. You just can't. You need several years of self-study, self-practice, and then from there, you can then see things in other people. But you have to start with this laboratory first.
That's a good piece of advice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really important. So, slowly learn these things. Learn them from me. Learn them from other people that know what they're talking about. And then when you start to understand them, then you'll start seeing them showing up in your own life. And then out of that, you'll be able to communicate it in the most effective, efficient way to your students. And that's the beauty of understanding it and knowing it inside and out. So it's with this podcast, with this, this session,
yeah,
I'm just trying to encourage people to dive deeper into it because it's a very
have a look what's going on. Yeah.
It's a very essential point.
On a personal level, like if you're saying you're too much Vata or you've suffered with too much Vata, have you ever used foods particularly? I'm kind of curious to know, really, to just kind of, because I think that's a good one. I think it seems like the most obvious thing to go to. Obviously, like overstimulating, living in an overstimulating place. Like people, oftentimes these big Mysore programs are in the middle of a city right? And it's
Yeah.
just craziness. It's like you're doing this practice and you're walking out on this, like I was teaching the same way in the middle of London. And people,
Yeah.
you're stimulating your system, and the people walk out into the city, it's just like, oh my God, it's kind of like a recipe for disaster in a way, isn't it? Just
Yeah.
hit by all this.
Yeah.
So obviously, this is an obvious one, but also the other obvious thing you've got is you have to eat, and you can use foods to balance or further disrupt these patterns, right? So how have
That's right.
you used foods to kind of cut? I mean, generally, I'd say it's for these people that are serious into Ashtanga, it's generally kind of principles of life, foods, etc., that are tempering, that are calming, that are, because yoga is, it's not inherently a positive, as you mentioned before, a positive. You just practice and it's all good. It's like, well, I mean, what happens is it just spins the wheels. It spins the wheels of stimulation, of karma, and then it's like, well, how do you deal with that? Now, it might might over capsize your ship if you don't use some principles to kind of balance it down, or it might
That's right.
transform you if you can hold it in a context.
Yeah.
It's all about having
Yeah.
stability to be able to hold the yoga, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So everything that you just said is correct. Um, it's it's a deep knowing and an understanding of these principles, and out of that, you'll know you'll know what to eat. See, I could give you a list of like, okay, these are Vata foods. This will increase Vata. There's plenty of I can just go online. There's a whole list of like all the Vata foods. Don't eat this. Oh, eat this. Oh, Pitta foods. Eat this. Don't eat that. You know. So
But also, I
just
suppose for some people, a vata food might not be a vata food, right? I mean, like it, right, if you're kapha and and you're eating a certain food, would still be a vata food, or would it be different depending on your dosha? Like, does it become a lot more complicated depending on who's eating what?
it's a little bit more complex than just like saying this is just Vata. That's a Vata food. And if you're Vata, you can't eat that. That's not true. Like for instance, like eating a lot of salads, eating a lot of raw food, eating a lot, just only raw food. Let's say I'm a raw food, person.
Mm-mm.
Just eating raw food is very vatagenic. It'll increase your vata. Okay. So if you're eating only raw food and you're doing your asana practice like a maniac all over the place, and then you're living in the middle of New York and you have a very active, busy, on the phone, doing a lot of, you're going to go through the roof. You're going to have a nervous breakdown.
Mm.
So, in order to temper that with food, I'm speaking directly about food
Yeah.
because it's something that we take in at least 2 or 3 times a day.
Mm.
So, it's really important that we choose the right foods that will bring us the right amount of elemental uh, energy that will help to balance us. So, if you're Vata, you want to have a little bit more of the Kapha kind of food, things that are more grounding, that are more settling, that are more soothing, that are more um, not a little bit heavier on the heavier end. What we have to watch out with Vata people is that their fire is not real strong. So sometimes, it's really hard for them to um, digest things. So we have to work on the level of increasing their Agni. So it's a little tricky from the standpoint of being like an Ayurvedic doctor and saying like, okay, you need to eat this food and we need to increase your Agni, your fire, because your digestive power is not correct. So each person kind of shows up a little differently. It's not, you could have 10 Vata people in the room and each one of them have different symptoms going on. But it'll be a Vatagenic symptom. Like one person out of those 10 people, they can't sleep. That's the main thing. It's like I can't sleep. I'm an
Mm.
insomniac. I can't, my Vata is like so
Is that always
so
Vata?
restless.
I mean, they're sleep because a lot of people are suffering now with telling me increasingly that they can't sleep. That's always Vata.
It's Vata. It's Vata.
Are there any generalization?
Vata's
it's wind,
fear,
right?
anxiety,
Right.
insecurity. Look what fucking is going on with all this COVID bullshit. How many people are like afraid and they lost their job and there goes Vata.
Is there any very generalized instructions you'd give, just for someone listening who's suffering from sleeplessness and who's doing a Ashtanga practice that's, I'd say, generally increasing Vata, right? The Ashtanga practice, as well as Pitta, perhaps a little bit. There are kind of very basic generalizations. I mean, apart from drink more coffee and do more practice.
We're jumping. We're kind of jumping all over the place. So if we're going to focus on practice, then how do we practice? How are we going to use our Ashtanga practice most appropriately? So again, if we're going to take a Vata person, I'm not going to have them do too much. I'm going to have them do it very slowly, methodically, really slow, deep breaths. Make sure that they're grounded when they're doing things. Make sure that they have integrity. They're not just like racing through it. And then, okay, I did it. I want more. I want more. So you have to as a teacher, you have to kind of temper it and just go, look, that's enough for today. We just need to work on the overall quality of your breathing and how you're holding yourself. And you have to show up like really calmly also when you're talking to them. Remember, I said Vata people are like flowers. So the nature of using something as a tool is it appropriate or not? So now let's flip-flop it, and we have a Kapha person in front of us, which is very rare that they come to an Ashtanga class. But for a Kapha person, we want to stimulate them. We're like, come on, give me a little bit more, and kind of invoke like some fire and some stimulus to them.
So those ones you can shout at a bit. You can crack the whip and shout a bit. Can you?
Yeah. He said that. So Dr. Lad said, Vata people you treat like flowers, Pitta people you treat like your friend, and Kapha people you treat like your enemy. In a nice way. Like, you can be a little bit more gruff with them. Come on, you can give me more than that. Come on, don't be so lazy, or whatever.
What about the friend bit? That's interesting. Pitta is your friend. Why?
Well, because they're friend, meaning like you want to be gentle with Pitta people. You don't want to be too forceful, and you don't want to be too overly how do you say, like nice to them, or soft. They love the challenge. Pitta people love to be challenged. That's why they're attracted to Ashtanga. They want to be fit. They want to be strong. They like the challenge, So we have to talk to them like as a friend. Hey, you know what, Adam? You might want to tone it down a little bit. Like you're getting overheated. You see how much sweat there is around your mat? Like you're working way too hard, Adam. Just relax a little bit, brother. Relax a little bit.
So a lot of it's actually about interpersonal relationships as well. It's not just about food, or it's actually about relating to the right people who are going to give the right messages as well. So you might find a teacher who's perhaps balances your Vata out or balances your Kapha out, right? If you're a Kapha person with a Kapha teacher, that's not going to be helpful, right? So you just got to find the right.
A good teacher is going to be able to orchestrate the whole room.
Okay.
And he's going to be like operating and seeing like Vata people and knowing how to talk to them. Pitta people, knowing how to talk to them. There's a few random Kapha people, you crack the whip.
Keep them from going out the door.
People that don't know Ayurveda, they're just going to be doing a generic practice. Okay, let's do a lead class. Samastitihi. Yekam.
Right, okay.
So Trini, Jatori. That's bullshit. That's not Ashtanga.
So basically, the principle, the reason why Ayurveda is essential is because it shows that yoga needs to be individualized. That's the
Exactly.
crux of it, isn't it?
That's
That
exactly right.
yeah.
That's what Krishnamacharya said over and over and over again. This whole generic
Was he into
thing.
Ayurveda?
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah. Big time. Big time. Yep.
What about, I
Yeah, he
mean,
was
people
like
talk
Dr.
about,
Lad.
what about Tejas and Ojas and increasing? Don't we have to increase Ojas, right, in the body?
You want to increase all three of those actually.
Right.
What
Oh,
you have to
Tejas,
do,
Onas, and Prana. Tejas, Onas, Prana. Yeah.
yeah. The way that I explained it in my book is that Vata Pitta Kapha are doshas. They're faults. They're energies in the body that if Vata gets too high, there'll be particular symptoms. Okay? You'll get constipated, your skin will get dry, your hair will get dry, you'll be ungrounded, you'll be nervous, anxious. If your pitta gets high, you'll be like overheated, you'll get acid reflux, you might have diarrhea, you might get a skin rash, you might have red eyes, you might be like burning migraine. Kapha, you might have a lot of mucus, congestion in your lungs, you might be gaining weight, you might be more lethargic. Those are all like high Vata, Pitta, or Kapha. And no matter what your constitution is, you might have some of those symptoms going on. There's a tremendous amount of Vata on the planet right now because of
Hmm.
this whole COVID mess. So people's Vata is through the roof, okay? Meaning like their Vata is like really like exaggerated.
Mm,
So there's a lot of nervousness, anxiousness,
mm.
ungroundedness, poor sleep, indigestion. It just spirals into all kinds of health issues. So now, when you take on a yoga practice and a meditation practice and understand Ayurveda, then what we start doing is alchemically, you become an alchemist and you start transforming Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. Vata, you turn Vata into prana. You turn Pitta into Tejas. You turn Kapha into Ojas. So you have to know how to properly use your yoga practice, use foods, use meditation, use all these things appropriately, and then you'll build all three of those. And those three will enhance your overall spiritual progress and the ability to see things more clearly, even though everything is swirling around you.
And what, I mean, just for those, including me, really, that can't remember or don't know what, I mean, Prana, Ojas, and Tejas stand for. Can you just give a basic overview of that, those terms?
Sure.
Thanks.
Prana is the overall energetic quality of what you can take in from the outside and
Hmm.
use it as
Right.
as an energy system that floods all of the nadis. There's 72,000 nadis, and prana is running through those tubes, and especially through the Shushumna and the Ida and the Pingala, which intersects every chakra,
It's
all
not just
six
breath, prana,
chakras.
because people talk about prana and breath kind of almost interchangeably, don't they?
Prana is in the breath, but
Yeah.
it's
So the
also
breath
inherent
isn't
in our
prana.
food.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's there. You can that's why there are some yogis that can just breathe and support and nourish themselves through prana. They're breatharians
And that can exist,
because
can it?
yeah, of course it can. And you can limit the amount of food that you take in by the amount of prana that you take in through your breath. That's why pranayama is very, very effective and efficient and vital for someone practicing yoga. They have to refine their prana, how they take in the prana. It's not like how much air you're sucking in, it's creating space within the system so that prana can enter. You see, it's almost like you're creating a vacuum. And in that stillness, in that quietness of your body and your mind, prana then can then infiltrate every single nadi, every 72,000 nadis, especially the Shushumna and the Ida and the Pingala, the DNA, the serpent energy. Okay? So prana is refined um, Vata. And so how do we refine it? How do we get prana? We get prana through, number one is our breath. The second way in which we get prana is through our food. So that's why food is very important. If you don't have a lot of prana in your food, you're not going to be nourishing your body and your mind. So that's why it's really important to pick foods that are high in prana. And as you progress within your yoga practice and your meditation, you need less and less of the food component because you're getting so much prana through your breath. So you don't need to take in so much physical heavy food. And you can still maintain, strength and energy and vitality because you're getting it through your breath. That's why pranayama is so vital. But a lot of people, they just like inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale.
You can
Just
you can
mechanically
keep the
going.
same weight, but just breathe better, and you don't need to eat
That's
so
right.
much. Either you're eating less, but you're staying the same weight because you're
You
taking it from
become
the air.
you become like you become like an efficient, effective machine, man.
Okay.
You're just like a Ferrari and you're putting in like the right fuel.
So what about tejas and ojas then?
So Tejas is refined Pitta. So Tejas is refined fire. So we need fire. Fire is a key element with health. Radiant health. Radiant. You want to be radiantly alive? Radiantly healthy? Yeah,
Yes,
of course
please.
I do.
Yeah.
So fire is really important. So we have to be able to stoke the fire inside of us, and we have to know how to turn the temperature up and down. We have a thermostat inside.
Thermostat. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Tejas is Pitta, Agni, fire. Tejas is refined fire. So we have to know how to turn it up and turn it down. If our
Okay.
fire is turned up too high and we're like, we burn out. We fry everything. We fry our brain. We fry our nervous system. We get fried. You see? But if you have the right amount of heat, then you can transform.
So what
You
is
can
tejas
be
then? The thermostat or the heat?
it's the refined element of heat. It's the
Right.
heat. It's the refined, like how do you define heat? You know, what's in fire? The flame.
Yeah.
Tejas. Agni.
Okay.
It's a Sanskrit word
Okay.
that just
So it's
means a
like Agni.
refinement of an energy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's
Okay.
it's like how do you use it within the context of the body and the mind? So when you have really good tejas, you're like on fire, man. Like you can see right through things. You can see, yes, that's the truth. No, that's not. It's like you're just like penetrating, pop, like
Yeah.
boom.
Yeah.
And ojas is like the essential juice. It's like you want to be juicy. You want to be juicy and full, and it's refined kapha. So it's like the fuel. If we don't have enough ojas, then we're going to get burned out through doing too much of these practices too. Like if we do like a really intense fire practice and we don't have enough ojas, we're going to get dried out. A lot of people, like a lot of women, they lose their menstrual cycle because they
So
don't
that's the
know how
ojas in the
to
woman, the menstrual
evoke the
cycle.
quality.
Because I
Yeah,
thought the
and with
ojas for a
men,
man is in
see
the
there's
semen, isn't it?
well, that's the end of the cycle. There's within Ayurveda, there's 7 tissues in the body that get nourished. Once we eat something, then it becomes plasma, and then plasma turns to blood, and then blood turns to muscle tissue, and then muscle tissue turns to fat tissue. Fat tissue turns to bone tissue. Bone tissue turns into nerve tissue, and then nerve tissue turns into reproductive tissue. And then reproductive tissue then becomes ojas. So if a man is ejaculating, masturbating, having too much sex, all that stuff, he's going to be losing his essential juice that's going to be nourishing his ojas. So he's not going to have a lot of ojas. Ojas is like money in the bank, Adam. It's like putting money in the bank. It's like when you have good ojas, you have like you have a
is that
good
why
supply.
it's said to the ought to be brahmacharya due to ojas nurturing, right?
Yeah, but you can't impose it. You can't force it. It has to be something that it has to be something that's understood from a deeper level of why you're doing it and how to do it. You can't just impose it. You can't just have like, oh yeah, you need to be brahmacharya. And you tell that to a young teenage boy. They'll go kooky. That's all they think about is sex. Right? So we have to channel that energy. So doing it like an Ashtanga or sports. Why do boys get involved with sports? They have to channel that energy, man. They got to get all that energy out, playing sports. And doing Ashtanga is a great way to kind of channel that energy correctly. So it's a great, way to invoke.
Well, that was why it was kind of given to the young boys in the first place. Yeah, in India, just to kind of keep them on the straight and narrow, as it were.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. Definitely doing sports and stuff does mitigate the libido a little bit. Yeah,
and then you need to just see all this stuff is not being taught. It's not being understood. Look at what a mess the boys and the girls are in. They don't even know what sex they are anymore. I mean, it's all mixed up, convoluted. The men are like too effeminate. The women are becoming too dominant and aggressive. Like we need to find the correct balance and together. That's tantra. If you're in a male body, embody maleness and invoke the female part of yourself so you're not too aggressive and dominant and fiery. You see? So that's Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga, Ha and Ta, sun and moon yoga. That's the asana practice. Bringing those two together in a harmonious way. Then we're in equanimity, you see? But we have to know how to use it. If we're too fiery, then we get like too aggressive. And then we're aggressive with everything. We do.
I think the problem in the first place with yoga is that the yoga practice isn't being used for the aim of balance, right? The balance, the idea of progress as balancing has been kind of lost or forgotten, as a progress is simply progress, which has nothing to do with balance, right? Because it's kind of been subsumed into a capitalist idea of progress, which is nothing to do with balance whatsoever. But the idea originally is yoga is attempting to balance you for peace of mind. Well, Prem, I'm conscious of our time on this episode, so let's leave it there with this one, and we're going to come back for the next one on tantra, I think, if Prem's up for another one. I hope you've enjoyed it, everyone listening. Feel free to comment and obviously subscribe to the channel, and comment and leave your comments as to what you think about the Ayurveda, and I'm sure I can coax Prem to answer some of your questions if you have any further questions on the subject. Or at some point you have to go and visit him in Bali. He's still in Bali and he's teaching there. And certainly get the book, because the book is bloody good.
Yeah, I would like at some point I would like to thanks, Adam. I appreciate that. At some point when the restrictions get lifted, I would like to travel more. I want to continue to travel. My original name of my my handle, so to speak, is Ashtanga World. AshtangAWorld.com.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. I do remember that. Yeah.
So, and then when Radha and I got together, we created Ashtanga Yoga Bali. But Ashtanga World, I still have that, and that's part of
Right.
what I
Okay.
love
So
to
watch
do. I
out.
love
He may be
traveling and
coming to a
teaching.
space near you. If you want him to come,
Also, I'm going to be
he's for
doing
hire.
a spiritual gangster workshop. I'm going to be doing some online stuff, so look out for that, or
Well,
look
we
up
can talk
for
about
it.
that in another episode. So let's
Okay.
wrap this one up on
All
kind
right.
of a basic overview on Ayurveda. And well, thank you, Prem, for a wonderful and lively chat as
Sure.
always. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. All right.